Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Hey, Alexander, what's our first question?
First question this morning is coming from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Jacksonville, Florida. Can you explain the best way to segment Dante traffic on a managed network to avoid interference with other production traffic?
And Guy Cochran's going to help you out here. Guy?
Yeah, I'm not the big expert on this, but I know enough to be dangerous. The best way is to use a VLAN or a physically separate network. For example, on a managed switch like an M4250 here, you can actually select the ports that you want to be configured as, like here, this one says profile name NDI, but this profile actually handles Dante as well. You can do dedicated Dante profiles, but this would be the easiest way is to just buy a 4250 with these ports already done, because there's little things like energy savings that is on QoS. There's spanning tree. There's all these things, these layer 3 things that can interfere with Dante. So if you want it clean, I've seen on site where people just completely have physically separate cabling, separate switches, and they just don't let anything else touch that network. But for those of us that like to have NDI on one side and Dante on another, you could say like VLAN 10, VLAN 20, so 10 for NDI, 20 for Dante. And using these switches just makes life so much easier from Netgear with the profiles. I know Mickey will be like, hey, just get a Cisco or something, and then you can go in there and in the command line give it all the detail that you need for the config file. And for the masters that know how to do all that stuff, that's great. But I found it easy just to go into the M4250. If you've got multiple of them, you could use this software here that's called Engage, and you can say I have a couple of these 4250s, so I could manage using Engage. I could manage all of my M4250s in one pane of glass, so I can see all of them, and I can assign those ports individually to any device that has those. And then I like to have a physically separate dongle. So especially if it's a 10 gig port, I've heard and seen people that buy a Ultra Studio or something and it has a 10 gig Apple's built-in port. And then when they try to run Dante on it, there's been some little blips. So we put a separate NIC on there, a little Ethernet dongle, and that helps solve the problem. So those are a few of the tips to help clean things up.
And we've got some things in from Mickey McAchore in the comments today. Pedro G. Gonzalez says, utilize QoS with the appropriate DSCP priorities set. And he also noticed this and many other very basic questions are answered in the Dante certification training courses, and he highly recommends taking them. So hopefully that gives you some areas to look at, Pedro. Next question.
This one's from Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA. Can we take a moment to acknowledge members of our community for taking home Emmys for Outstanding Graphics Design event/show?
This is the best kind of Cochran being thrown. It's a guy asking a question that he knows the answer to, but in order to celebrate some of the members of our community who have done exceptional work over the past year. So, Guy, tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, this was brought to my attention by some friends in the community that our very own Jonas Dattel got an Emmy. So
awesome!
Yeah, Jonas picked one up, and Bo got his third. So
Gordo got his third. Excellent.
There they are. But yeah, that's amazing that this community, we've bound together and things like this happen. Like they would have never gone together if it wasn't for office hours. So cool thing to see that folks in our community are, rising to the cream of the crop and getting acknowledged for their work. So
many of us have been so impressed by the just absolute brilliance and quality of the people we've met through office hours over the course of the years. I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years essentially. And these are people that we met online post-pandemic. We kind of got to know everybody. Everybody decided we wanted to show up here and do this volunteer work every morning. And the people who showed up were extraordinary in so many areas. And here we are 3, 4, 5 years later, and people are picking up Emmys for how good they are at what they do. So our heartfelt thanks for the participation of everybody who handles being part of this community, and our deep congratulations to Jonas and everybody else who helps us out, helps us make this happen every single day. Well done, one and all. Next question.
This one's from David Brady, New York City, New York. For the Mac users on the panel, what are some of your favorite system monitors that can live in the menu bar, and what are the equivalents for our Windows brethren?
Alexander Knight, you want to dive into this?
There's only one that I don't really like clogging my menu bar. I'm kind of a minimalist, but I do really enjoy the iStat Menus app from... It's not Rogue Amoeba. Who is it that makes that? It's Django. Django Software, I believe, makes that. So iStat Menus, I'm not sure what the equivalent on Windows is because it's been a while since I've kind of toyed with Windows utilities. Funny enough, actually, speaking of utilities, I actually find Task Manager now in Windows 11 to be a little bit better in design than Activity Monitor. Apple has not updated Activity Monitor in Mac OS I'm pretty sure it looks like how it looked at the beginning of OS 10 when it first came out. So it really hasn't changed all that much. So Craig Federighi, if you're watching this show, if you could maybe do a little design refresh this year, that would be much appreciated.
Well, the people who use Activity Monitor, who dive into the deep stats, I know there are more and more every day, but I'm sure it's a pretty small amount of the number of people who handle and work with Macintoshes. Jeffrey Powers, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm exactly like Alexander. I don't want to add anything to my system because that can always become the problem when you're actually doing something like working on a production. But I will say that for the Mac and for Windows, if you go into Stream Deck, there's actually a CPU monitor inside of Stream Deck that you can put and actually activate as a full button to see what's going on your computer. Other than that, with Windows, I run ASUS, so ASUS has the My ASUS utility, which works pretty well. And then, of course, if you've got the NVIDIA drivers, if you're using an NVIDIA graphics card, they have software that will also monitor your system. But as Alexander said, Task Manager is more than enough in a lot of situations because if I'm in the middle of a production, the last thing I want to do is deep dive into what's going on with the graphics unless I absolutely have to.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, in Windows, if I just want to see the numbers and see what's getting overloaded, I use HW Monitor. Looks like, doesn't look like that. Looks like this from CPU ID. It's a free download, and it shows you a variety of things like temperatures, voltages, the speeds that each core is running at, so that you can tell if there's thermal throttling going on, and you can tell what the temperature is, it has lows and highs. So it knows what the minimum speed was and what the maximum speed was, because speed changes on these cores dynamically. And also it lets you see the temperature on everything. So when something's getting overloaded and about to be throttled down, shows you the voltages, also shows you your GPU and what elements of the GPU are working. If I've got a rogue process, Task Manager is the way to trap those. You can see when it arranges the tasks that are running by how much CPU they're using, or how much memory they're using, or if they're doing disk I/O or network I/O. I use that to end rogue processes and to monitor when something seems to be sucking up all of my CPU power and it's running at 100%. I'll use Task Manager to weed those out.
Next question.
This one is from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Jacksonville, Florida. How do you avoid feedback issues when combining in-room sound reinforcement with live-streamed audio from a Zoom panel participant?
And we're going to turn it right back to Alexander Knight. Alexander?
Well, for starters, hiring someone who's a really experienced audio engineer would really, really help, because that will make all the difference in the world, not just having the right equipment, but having the right person. It really starts, number one, it really starts with getting your gain structure wrong. And really that's the difference between someone's sort of just a hobbyist or a beginner and someone who's an experienced sound engineer, is they understand gain structure. Because things can be very, very chaotic if things are not set up correctly, if mics are not set up correctly, if the PA isn't properly tuned and set at the right level. All that kind of stuff really matters. There's processing involved with that. So for starters, if you're going to have open speakers in a room, having echo cancellation inside of Zoom turned on would also help. Some of us also use digital mixers that have Dugan Auto Mix, or some flavor that is not officially called Dugan, but some kind of auto mix, which is a really fast way of pushing down microphones that are not actively being utilized in the panel discussion, that kind of stuff. It helps with minimizing mic bleed and potential comb filtering issues that you get with a lot of open mics in close proximity to each other. So that's really the start of it. I don't want to go too down into the weeds on this because it's kind of a complex topic.
Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
Yeah, it depends on the type of feedback you're talking about, whether it's just your basic howling feedback from, speakers feeding back into the microphone and regenerating in a loop. Or if you're talking about somebody on a Zoom call, you got to make sure that they have mix minus enabled to that person so that their audio that is coming through the speakers so that people in the room can hear it doesn't feed back into the microphones and loop back to the people to the person that you're talking with. So that it creates a loop, especially also make sure that the person you're talking to or bringing into a Zoom conference is not on speakers. They're monitoring through a headset and don't have any live speakers turned on in their situation. Zoom will generally manage this by echo cancellation, and it automatically sets up mix minus. But if you're not using Zoom, that can fail a lot, and that can cause for a delayed feedback where they talk, they hear themselves back, it loops back through the PA system and goes back into the microphones, and it becomes an endless loop of echoes. So you want to be able to manage that, and Zoom helps manage that to some degree, but make sure you have your mix minuses set up correctly so that feedback loop doesn't happen.
Alexander, you want to do a follow-up?
Yeah, and also too quickly, just make sure you choose the right microphones. A lot of people without any experience don't understand that there are polar patterns on microphones, and so they buy or rent Omni lavs or head-worn microphones with Omni capsules in it. I don't recommend that unless the space is very well acoustically controlled or you have an experienced engineer. Getting unidirectional microphones is super important, whether that's I would probably try and get a head-worn microphone because with a cardioid microphone capsule, so it doesn't pick up the room as much and it picks up directly what's in front of it. And you'll get better signal to noise ratio as well. Some people that do use lavs use cardioid lavs, which is fine if someone's sitting down in a chair and maybe they're not going to be moving their head around or they're really experienced with mic technique. The problem with cardioid mics, because they're so directional, especially with lav mics, is the moment someone turns their head. Now, this is a cardioid microphone, so if I turn my head right off axis, you can see my voice. You've lost a lot of volume there, right? So that's always an issue. In fact, we were talking on the show a couple of weeks ago about that interview with Johnny Ive. I forget where he was doing this interview, and they clearly put a cardioid lav on his shirt, and he sat down in a chair and he's having a conversation with someone, and the moment he did this, his voice just like dropped away. So be careful how you use cardioid lav mics.
And we got a couple of things from Mickey in the chat. Mickey said, good microphone choice, good microphone placement, good PA systems design, low stage sound pressure level, and in-ear monitors all work to help you when you're trying to do something like this. And Mickey has another bunch of comments in there. Wait a second, not next question. I've got to make a note here. We are always taking your questions. This show is run by your questions. The chat about the questions and vote on them. You can do all of that in our Q&A system. If you go to officehours.global/join, we'll send you an email within a day or two. And once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions on our live show community in real time. The voting on is important because we get to the ones with the most votes quicker and we spend more time talking about them. So you really do program the show by your participation, particularly your votes on the questions in Mukana. All right, next question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. When you pack up and move your gear from one location to another, how do you make it easy to reassemble everything?
Courtney Gooden.
Well, make sure everything is connected together. I travel all my cases have been designed to be self-contained so that everything that works in that case is already plugged into each other. Here's an example of one of my playback rigs. It's in this SKB case or a Gator case. That it has, two monitors, it has a switcher, it has a hyperdeck, it has this fold-out This is on an arm that's connected, and then when I fold it up, this shelf slides in. This monitor flips around and tucks inside here, and you put the lid on. And this monitor on top is a flat monitor, a portable monitor that's stored inside the lid. And the only thing, when I get there, the only thing I have to plug in is AC and this external monitor, and it's ready to go. And then, of course, anything I'm going to feed out. It does look a little complex on the inside, but everything is pre-connected. And like I say, there's even an outlet strip if I need to plug in anything additional. And the one cable that comes out of the pack is the AC, and it has built-in lights and everything and the power control on it. So it's easy that way. If you're going to pack everything in separate cases, and when you get there, you got to take them out and put them on tables and plug everything in, all the inputs to the outputs, and figure out your wiring diagram every time. This way, it's a lot easier, saves you tons of setup time if you have one case that has everything connected and only your external connections, like a camera or a monitor that you've got, an external monitor that you got to plug into, has to be plugged in when you get there.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I did exactly the same thing. Every time that I had something, I tried to put it all together. Like, for instance, I would travel with the Slate, and with the Slate, also had a external switch. So I would make, and with 3D printing, it's made things a lot easier to actually make something that'll actually put the two together and connect it up. So if you do have to not have it in a case, kind of take it out and put it on a table, then it's just one piece in and out. I highly recommend, if you do that, whatever cables, because I make very, very short cables that would run from one to the other, so I don't have to see them as much. But I highly recommend, if you do that, to bring extra cables, because you never know what happens. Even if you have it nicely tightened down, you never know what happens when it's on an airplane or on a bus, jostling around, or your truck or whatever, moving around as it's going from there. A lot of times I would use it as in one Pelican case, so I would section off the Pelican case, so the audio and network would be one, and then the cameras would be the other. And then, of course, if you got cables, I always traveled with a 100-foot cable, because we'd always have to do from stage to production booth. So if you do that, make sure that you're doing the over-under method on your cables, so you're not tangling it up, because it's a lot easier to loosen. And then, of course, gaff tapes, so you can tape that whole thing down.
A lot of good advice there. Hopefully that helps you out, Paul. Next question.
This one's from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. What are your thoughts on the Panasonic UE-160 versus anything else comparable?
And Guy Cochran's going to help us out a little bit. Guy?
Yeah, I wasn't sure who else was going to be on the panel to help answer this one. Yesterday I was on site, and this studio that has 8 of these UE-150s was looking at getting these 160s. And then this morning, LiveX put up this video that detailed out some of the features of the new UE-160. So a lot of us were excited about it because it's got this optical low-pass filter, and they can upgrade their 150s by sending them into Panasonic and having them put the optical low-pass filter on the 150. So it's like $2,000 though per camera to do this, and they got 8 of them. So they're just like, should we just buy the new ones, or should we? I sent them over Greg Gibson's Sony NAB presentation with the new Sony AM7, which is a $12,000 camera. So they're similarly priced, and the AM7's just got this fantastic AI auto tracking. So after watching that, they're thinking maybe they're going to go over to some Sony FR7s and some FX6s for the tripod mounted cameras. So it's kind of interesting. And I see Mickey's in the chat saying not much really. There's the Mark Roberts ARC360, but it's getting long in the tooth. Yeah, the other thing that I just read in that or listened to in that video that I put a link there to is that that it's got where is that? Here it is. It's got NDI bridge built into the UE-160, so you can put up this camera, the UE-160, and not have to connect it to a PC. You just plug in Ethernet, and it can go out over the internet and send its video and audio. Plus, you could control it from anywhere in the world. So this is pretty cool. Just open up Studio Monitor and NDI, or just NDI Studio Monitor on your network, and this thing could be anywhere in the world once it gets on the internet. That's pretty fantastic. So there's a couple things going on here where the decision's not just as easy as it once was. I mean, depending on what you do, Sony, Canon, Panasonic, Bird Dog. I don't even know if Bird Dog's in the running anymore. But I was hoping some more people would say. I mean, Jeffrey, do you have anything to say about the PTZ optics or any of the other PTZs that you're using?
Do you want to hop in, Jeffrey?
No, sorry, I was preparing for the next question.
We're just talking about all the different options available in pan tilt zoom cameras and just remote presence, telepresence cameras. Guy went through a whole bunch of them, and there's so much activity in that space. It's really hard to keep up with things.
Then I will add the fact that when it comes to PTZ optics, not as much. Well, they do have a lot of the AI stuff on there, but of course they came out with their Hive system, and that's the ability to remote control it from another location, and it works for all PTZ cameras, but it works even better if you have a PTZ optics camera because it works with the hardware and the firmware inside, so you can be in a different city, country, whatever. And if a house of worship calls you up and says, hey, our PTZ camera's not working, or live event says, hey, the PTZ's not working, you can remote in and fix it or run it at that point if they say that we don't have a person to man it.
Courtney, you wanted to get in on this?
I was going to ask Guy what the advantage of an optical low pass was for preventing moire and you're shooting video walls, or what is that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I work with these guys, and at one of the local larger hospitals, they have a corporate building where there's a big LED wall behind the presenters. And so I'm sitting there having to go in with synchro scan and just do the best I can to fix not only the sync, but just try to work the lighting as best I can to get a shallow depth of field. But you're really just at a loss. It is what it is. It's a person standing in front of an LED wall, and you're going to get that moire, and you can fight it as best you can by positioning the camera and zooming in and trying to open up the iris all the way. But at the end of the day, it needs that optical low pass filter. And so that's the thing, is how many of those type of gigs do you do versus others where a Canon might be a better fit. I see James Haldane in the chat saying that, in my humble opinion, the Canon CRN 500 has a much better controller, which is the IP1000, better autofocus and works better in low light. And I've used that camera as well, and I've used that controller. And that's the thing, is it comes down to preference. Like the first question when I brought up the Sonys was the gentleman who's in charge of those cameras said, but how about a two-handed operation on that controller? Do you have to push with the second hand to do your zooms? And I said, no, it's on the Sony, it's a twist. So you could twist to zoom in, so you can have your hand on a Stream Deck or something else and be able to still move around. And that's the other thing, is Scarhoy makes a great controller. So for those folks that have been able to attend an NAB or could just go online and watch some videos as to what the Hall effect is. And so some of these controllers, they're just crap. So for lack of a better term, and they're
Tell
just
us what you really think, Guy.
Well, when you're doing these really subtle moves, it's nice to have a dial that lets you control speed, so you can say, okay, I want to whip really fast over here, but then I want to slow it down and I want to creep. I just want to really make a fine move, especially if you're following somebody on stage and you want it to be pretty graceful. And that video that, for those of you who haven't seen it, the video that Greg Gibson did, it's like a 30-minute presentation at NAB, is just fantastic. I mean, he really did a great job with that FR7 and AM7, which that AM7 firmware that he shows off will be available next month. So $12,000 camera with the new firmware is looking like the hot rod. Nobody in our community, I'm in the Seattle Northwest, nobody's bought these yet. Whereas I know like Noah Sargent in LA's got 4, Greg Gibson's got 4. There's a couple other people that have bought multiples of these cameras. And so I'm just like, well, what are we going to do? Because I work with these guys all the time, and I'm out there like, all right, buying decision where it's coming up fast. Like, which way to go? But maybe somebody in the chat will say, hey, yeah, there's some other options.
Well, there's been a robust chat about this during the course of the show, and that's part of why we have the chat there. It's for people to extend the conversation that happens live on the air. Hey, don't forget, we are running different shows now occasionally, and this happens to be Thursday, which means tonight, after the show at 6 p.m. tonight, The Rundown happens with David Paskin. He hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech that's reshaping the world. Fun show. I've been on it a number of times, and it's really a great community. We also have things like on Monday, the Extra Hours program out of Australia. What we're trying to do basically is provide content for people for whom this time slot isn't the most convenient, and we're continuing to expand things. So keep a list on the website as to what's coming up next. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. My Satechi stand/hub has limitations and the headphone jack never worked. Would the OWC Thunderbolt 5 dock be a good replacement, even though it doesn't have the same form factor as my Mac M1 Mini, which is what I liked most about the Satechi?
Jeffrey Powers, your thoughts?
So we love OWC here. I mean, we use it. I have a couple. I have one sitting over here. I have one sitting upstairs. I don't have the Thunderbolt 5, but it's probably the exact same thing. And with Satechi, basically, there's two things. First of all, they're using the TRRS method. So it's both a microphone and a headphone jack. So it's something like this right here, where you have the TRRS. You run into problems when it comes to there, especially when you're trying to find cables. Because at one point in time, there was a standard, and there was an Android standard, there was an iOS standard. Anybody who got the first generation Saramonic audio devices always got a cable that was for the Android, a cable that was for the iOS, because the TRS cable was switched around. So if you're going to get a cable for that, first of all, for the Satechi, I would you might want to take a look on Amazon, see if there's a TRRS cable to TRS adapter, and you might have to go 2 or 3 times, because that's what I've done with my OWC, which is also a TRRS, and I find that even the adapters are the wrong polarization, and I either have to cut into the cable and fix it, or I have to find another version of the cable, because that's the better thing than trying to fix the cable that you have there. Return it and get a new one from another vendor and see what happens there. I find that TRRS inputs are very unreliable, and so if you absolutely have to use it, then use it. Otherwise, I would get a separate interface that could plug it in, even USB to just simple audio right there that separates the microphone from the headphones. I really wish that they'd make something XLR, and I know that there is an audio interface, I believe it's from Behringer, that has XLR ins and XLR outs, which would be a better solution for that.
I am another person who keeps changing OWC things, chasing. I've got more OWC docks from my history, and every time they come up, they seem to increase their technology, their capabilities they provide for you, and they've just been rock solid. In fact, I was needing to connect the MacBook Air into my system to play content off of, and I was trying to figure out how to do it. And I thought, well, let me just get one of the old retired and see if that works, one of my retired OWC docks, and sure enough, performed flawlessly, and it's probably 8 years old now. Alexander?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Paul, you won't regret going with OWC. That's definitely the way to go. The one thing I will just say about the TRRS cabling is that there's 2 wiring standards. Now, most things these days are going to use the, what is it here? I had it written down. The CTIA standard. That's what the iPhones use. Most mobile devices will follow that wiring standard, but there's also the OMTP standard, which some older phones use and some older devices use. So that may be some of the troubles that people run into with the TRRS cabling stuff. But yeah, just get OWC and you'll find the reliability is a lot higher on those.
Let's go to our next question.
This one is coming from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What platform or services are recommended for selling access to VOD content? VODs will be professional content from industry experts. Solution must handle sales and distribution of the content.
Courtney Gooden's going to give you some tips here. Courtney?
Yeah, this can be a whole big can of worms, and depends on the type of billing you want to set up, whether it's a single view video on demand or if it's subscription based. You have to have secure processing for handling credit card payments. That's kind of difficult. And of course, you have to be able to scale if it's suddenly, there's a whole lot of people that want to stream that video at the same time. It's got to be able to scale up and handle the traffic. I did find there's a number of different suppliers that package this stuff all in one and will host your stuff, Amazon being one of them with AWS. I did find a good article here on Vidizmo, VIDIZMO.ai, where they compare the 10 best video on demand platforms for 2025, and they compare the different brand comparisons. So you might take a look at that website and see what they recommend. I can't recommend any because I haven't set up any of those systems. But Netflix is has been trying to keep the freeloaders off their network for years now, and they're just now starting to get successful at tracking your basic IP address and figuring out where you are and who's got your password and is using it illegally on a different IP. It depends on how strictly you want to enforce the video on demand and people sharing passwords, et cetera, and the security of access.
That all makes perfect sense to me. I've been using Vimeo Pro for a long time. I don't do video on demand, but I have been interested in watching them continue to roll out additional video on demand services over the course of time. We use it as a content distribution network, particularly for corporate people behind a firewall, so that when we're working on something, only people with passwords have access, but then eventually you can publish it and remove that. And I always like the fact that it worked with some of the other, I believe it's AWS services, like you could throw something on Frame.io into Vimeo with a single click because it was both using the same server farms. But it's a complicated thing, and you need to take a look out there and figure out what you need and how much access and how much restriction. But I would stay with one of the big players because I think the smaller rolled your own services, firewalls, and the ability to get into corporate centers and not be blocked. I mean, that's one of the problems with YouTube from everybody I talk to is that in corporate server systems and high rises and things like that, they don't want any of their people to be able to have access to the social media kind of video sites. So they often block those. And I found that services like Vimeo and other, Vimeo Pro particularly, don't really have that problem because they don't block them because they're not as consumer oriented. So just things to think about. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I tried joining the panel this morning. My audio failed me. There is something wrong in my chain, and I'm not sure what to do. The audio change has issues. Do I need to update or stay where I am until the problem can be resolved?
Courtney Gooden, what do you think?
Well, I would stay where you are until the problem can be resolved, and just follow basic troubleshooting methods to find the problem. As you say, it's an audio chain, and a chain consists of multiple links. So work your way through your audio chain from one end to the other. I think Jeffrey was there when you were having this problem, so he may have more information on this, but I understand it was in your monitoring of the Zoom call, so you might want to check your monitor chain starting with the Zoom reception, check in Zoom what you have as your set for your speakers, and then check the output of that device, whatever is set to your speakers, and trace it link by link until you get to your headphones to see and check if you've got a signal at each point. And where you don't have a signal, that's where your problem is. That's basic troubleshooting, sound troubleshooting methodology.
Sometimes, Tony, I found that a problem will show up for a little bit. You remember all of the services that we attach to, plus this show is kind of a test bed. We're constantly in evolution, and I had a little trouble logging in this morning as well. Every once in a while, I load up my camera and everything, and it defaults to my MacBook camera, and I'm going, no, I don't want that. I want the Blackmagic camera that's my main show camera. And this morning, I actually had to reboot my entire system, and it saw something that it hadn't seen before, and the next thing you know, I'm able to get to the camera that I want to get to. I don't think that's necessarily that unusual in the world of changing computers and every company trying to revise their services and give their users more capabilities, but sometimes it can be difficult to track down. Alexander, your thoughts?
Yeah, so from my understanding, based on what people are saying, it sounds like Tony is running macOS Sequoia. Sequoia's had some issues with audio, and it's only now they're starting to work out some of the kinks. In fact, macOS 15.5 just came out. So, Tony, if you are running Sequoia, first of all, make sure you're fully patched. I'm not sure specifically because I wasn't there when you had those issues. I don't know what exactly the problem was, but I've had repeated issues with all of the security features in macOS. So, for example, it seems like every time I patch the operating system, anytime I launch an application, it now wants to reprompt. Hey, do you want access to the microphone? Do you want access to the camera? And it keeps asking every time you patch the operating system, and it basically treats you like a complete imbecile that doesn't understand how to use a computer. I get Apple put these security prompts in there because they're trying to make it so that the users are empowered to take control over what system level functionality these applications will have access to. But when you're running professional apps and you know what you're doing, it's incredibly annoying. It's like, I already told you I will allow it. So assume that when you upgrade, when you patch, that I still want you to have access to the camera and the microphone and all the stuff that I already told you. So these are issues with macOS, and I don't know if it's going to get better anytime soon. I feel like Apple kind of has to come to grips with stuff and get stuff under control with their operating system, because it just seems to be getting less and less reliable every single year. I'm not sure if it's also related to the interface that you have. That's the other thing. I think you're still running a Zoom H4 field recorder, if I'm not mistaken, which, I mean, not the best interface. I'm not saying that's the cause of the issues too, but at some point you may want to also think about a better interface with better preamps, considering that you run that very, very demanding Heil PR40.
Yeah, it's challenging to keep up with the state of computing and the rest of that. All I know is that I am using some of these tools. I'm on Sequoia. I've managed to make it to host this show 250 times, and I've been here more than 1,000 times. And very seldom do I get up in the morning and something gives me a problem that I can't figure out, and get on. So, yeah. It's challenging for everybody on both the Mac and PC side, and this is complicated stuff we're doing. I mean, I sit back every once in a while and just go, wow, I'm able to come on here and talk to my friends on the panel, and I'm able to get my content out to the entire globe every day pretty much flawlessly. I mean, yes, there is a team in the background that has to solve problems. And sometimes I wake up and I start things and they don't go exactly as I expect. And sometimes it's because of an update that Apple pushed behind the scenes. I think that happens in the PC world as well. And you just have to say that the cost of doing this kind of work, of taking advantage of all this amazing production and distribution power that is now put in individuals' hands, is you have to figure out how to make it work. And sometimes that can be difficult. I feel the same thing that you do. But we manage somehow, and that's our purpose here on Office Hours, is to help you try to figure it out. And no matter what level of tech you're comfortable with, we try to make it as accessible as possible for you. So hopefully you're enjoying this. Speaking of that, if you have questions you want to put in the show queue, you can always type in askofficehours.global directly into your web browser. That's askofficehours.global. If you'd like, I will throw up the QR code here, and then you can actually literally just shoot that with your phone or something like that. It'll take you to the same place, askofficehours.global. That's kind of the quick path into the Q&A system that we have. And once you get over there, you can just type in whatever the question is. It's a pretty simple form, and somebody in the back end will take a look at it, make sure it's formed well, makes sense, and then that can get into the show very quickly in some circumstances. Those questions, by the way, are also persistent, so they will come into the next one if we don't get to them, because, again, everybody's voting for their priorities, and sometimes we have, in fact, almost every day we have more questions than we have time to answer, so that's where they will end up. All right, next question.
This one's coming from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Is the DJI Pocket Osmo 3 a serious documentary filmmaking tool? It's tiny. It actually has a Pro mode. Swiping left on the LCD screen and tapping Pro activates it.
I like the scare quotes around Pro. Jeffrey Powers, what are your thoughts?
Well, the thoughts are simple. And it really depends on what you're shooting. But people have used GoPros, people have used iPhones, people have used a lot of other devices that shoot out video and put them into movies, put them into TV shows, documentaries, and all that other stuff. Carpool karaoke, perfect example, where you got GoPros just sitting on the dashboard. So having something like the Osmo 3, which has more of a gimbal head to it, and stabilization, actually helps the producer and the editor as well. I use the Osmo 2 and the Pocket 2 over the 3 simply because of the fact that it's still a great camera, and being able to walk around and not get that jump shake. And there's even accessories that you can get that can even reduce that shake. So there's many different reasons to use it. And of course, that screen, yeah, it is small, but you can also attach a phone or tablet to it and actually view it from the tablet, which is not much of a better screen, but it's bigger and allows you to move things around. And if you're shooting real time, the biggest problem then becomes that joystick, because you can overshoot the product or the person that you're trying to get to. So the best thing to do is to try and do the PTZ, sit for a second, and then continue on. So it will allow that not to overshoot or anything like that.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I bought a Osmo Pocket when they first came out, and it's great for doing this kind of more clandestine kind of stuff. You know, these days you look at the scrum of reporters in any, when they're ambushing some senator in a hallway, and half of them are just using their phones. Some of them have their phones and gimbals, but most of them are using their phone, and then they have some type of handheld mic that is plugged into their phone for doing news coverage these days. I'm surprised that and when you look at the news people that are out there that are interviewing people, there's so few people with a camera on their shoulder now. It's amazing that most of these portable devices, and if you look at the Osmo Pocket 3, if you haven't looked at it lately, it has this flip sideways screen on it, which makes it a little more compact when you fold it up and put it away. And it can be literally put in a pocket as long as you protect the gimbal here. It has a case that will let you slip it into a pocket, front pocket, back pocket, shirt pocket, jacket pocket. And you can pull it out. And the nice thing it does, it's your recorder, your camera, your gimbal, all in one. The main weakness in these for major documentaries is sound. And the new ones do interface with a lot of the portable wireless microphones. So they have a plug-in accessory that plugs in the bottom that lets you plug in wireless mics, so you can put a lav on somebody and still have good sound off of this, and the ability to plug in a separate microphone. I would always suggest in a documentary you have a separate sound mixer anyway. There's recording double system on a second recorder, so they can deal with wireless mics and a boom mic, and can move that boom in to get closer, because the microphones that are built into the Osmo, are okay for just gathering ambient sounds. And if you're standing directly in front of someone and talking to them, it's okay, but not great. I think the biggest weakness is the sound in them. And if you do swipe left into the Pro mode and tap the Pro mode, it automatically doubles your rate card. That's the Pro mode.
Ooh, that's nice. My favorite comment in the chat is from Ryan Thomason. I put my GoPros on Astro's bobblehead dolls on my dash for that extra effect. Bobblehead cam for the wind. All right, next question.
This one's from the QR code Steve Holden in London, UK. What does the panel think about bonding versus load balancing? Looking to provide failover for a live stream. Interested in any specific policies employed for load balancing?
Guy Cochran's going to help us out. Guy? Whoops. I think you're muted, Guy.
A disturbance in the audio channel.
Uh-oh. Yes. The force, Guy, is usually spot on with that. And I don't see the Zoom mute, so something
Check
has...
one. Hey.
There you go.
Me?
You just came back.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So it really depends on where you're doing this. Is it going to be somewhere where you have a total hardwired connection, or do you truly need to bond? So like here in my home studio, I have the Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro, which when we cut over and look at the options here, we have the WAN 1 is the primary and WAN 2 is the backup, and it's on pure failover and not load balancing. Because what will happen if you load balance, sometimes packets will go down both paths depending on what's going on, and you don't want that for low latency. So you don't want things shooting down the wrong place. If you do go on site and you want to bond for a backup, you could still use something like this, like a PepLink. The downside is that you got to pay or host your own SpeedFusion server. Someone's got to take all those packets and bond them back together. And so say you have a live view, you're going to have, let's say, an LU800, you're going to have like 8 modems in there. So you're going to be paying for all those modems. So it just depends on where do you want to be, how much do you want to pay for data, what's it worth, what's the downside if you crash and burn, because we all play at different levels. And I've seen people bring on site just a secondary Comcast or something backup. So they'll just have temporarily another drop. So the venue will come in and say like, oh yeah, we got plenty of internet, but then they'll drop a second or even a third internet just in case. And that'll be a pure failover. So they won't use it to bond or load balance. They'll use it as pure failover. So the primary stream is just going. But if that gets knocked offline, then it just fails right over. And you'll see a dip, but it won't be that bad depending on your hardware. Like with this connection here with the Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro in a Zoom meeting, I've purposely pulled my primary just to see what would happen, and it recovered within a couple seconds, so it wasn't that bad. So again, it just depends on what you want to do and where you want to do it, and at what level do you want to have your monthly expenses for, because SpeedFusion is a license. So you could host it yourself up in the cloud, you could pay them to do it. So it just depends on, again, cost and how much you want to dig into this.
Jeffrey Powers, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I love load balancing when it comes to being in the studio and at home, because I can say, okay, if somebody's watching Netflix, you put it over there and it doesn't ever come over here. But if I'm doing a show and I have a problem, it can fail over to the other one. And yeah, that'll affect that, but at least the mainstream will still come on. So that's what I really like about load balancing. And there is the ability to do both, because then you load balance, but then one of the loads is actually the bonded connection. So if that has even more stability to that, then the chances of it failing over to the other internet is going to be minimal.
Don't forget, there are a few ways you can help what we do here. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit. You can like and subscribe. That's the easiest thing. That just takes a click, and we appreciate it, to the YouTube channel. You can also volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes this all happen every day. Great group of people, and you will learn a lot, trust me. And if nothing else works for you, you can simply make a donation if you'd like to officehours.global/donate. As I mentioned, we're a 501c3, so it is deductible. Thanks so much. And next question.
We have another QR code question coming from Reina Doppelpopoulos in Situate. We are curious how everyone keeps track of project notes, docs on each project, custom software. Would panelists be willing to share their start-to-finish workflow and tips with working with a client in regards to keeping organized?
Courtney Gooden's going to dive in and help you out a little bit here. Courtney?
Well, you know what I've been doing for years and my teleprompting business is I created a interactive PDF form. And I've got one up here with the client's information on it, but let me see if I can clear that information before I show it to you. Okay, so this is basically the PDF form that we have that I do for taking a booking from a client. And I created this form in Acrobat, and it has a place here for feeds for the company name, their address, all this stuff is, you can enter data in it. And then I created these little macros up at the top here that let you clear the form of all the data. You can clear the data for the job, but keep the company information in here by clicking on this button, or clear just the equipment. So let's say you've got a repeat client who you use all the time. You just bring up one of their old booking sheets. It has all their company information, their contact information, all that stuff over here. And it just changes the equipment that we're going to use on this particular project. And then we fill in the location, address, et cetera. The type of equipment that we need to bring is all in here. And then on the back, this is a two-sided form. On the back, there is a timesheet where the operator name and the job name and the equipment that they take is here. And they list their call time when they draw a line here, and they manually fill this in. And so when they turn in the booking sheet, I have the information on this one sheet that has not only who the operator was, who the client was, where the location was, what the name of the project was, and the call time, the wrap time, all that information on one sheet. And then I store that sheet in a file when the job is done, and I calculate the payment into payroll from the time card. And I put the invoice that is generated from the booking sheet and the time card, staple it to this booking sheet, and I put that in a file. So anytime I can go back 4 years from now and see what job was done on what day, who did it, where the company was, where the location was, what the job name was, and even sometimes the name of the files that were used. So that's how I track everything. It's kind of a combination of electronic and manual processing. Invoice tracking is all handled through Quicken. But this is how we keep track of the individual jobs that come in and track them through our system, so that we always have a paper backup, as well as keeping that PDF into a backup on a hard drive. So I can just go back 10 years and search for a client name, just show me all the jobs done for that client. I can bring up the booking sheet on any particular day and find out what that job was and where it was.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. When editing a project, how often do you run media backups during a slow month, and how often during a busy week? Do you increase the frequency as you near a deadline?
Jeffrey Powers.
That's a good question there, Roscoe. For me, it depends. I mean, if it's projects in-house, doing backups is not as critical because usually I end up I do a project a week, and then I'll have it sitting after that, and where it'll automatically back up from there. If I need the backups for a client, and especially a backup where they want to see what's going on, then I will put it on something like Dropbox or File.io or anything like that to allow them to see what's going on and have it backed up. And of course, if you're using Adobe products, their cloud backup is pretty decent for stuff like that. So you really just have to gauge it from there. And on especially really hard weeks, I think backing up is the most important, because if you're doing something super intense and then you get to Thursday and then find out you have a problem, or you find out media is missing, then that's a lot of work that's gone for naught. So at least have the backup happen when the machine's not running, maybe overnight or something like that.
Yeah, I do most of my work, as everybody knows, on Apple and FileMaker. And Final Cut Pro, I actually use FileMaker, but that's a different thing. And iCloud backs up most of that stuff pretty regularly. I will say that I'm kind of obsessive about it. I try to run backups at close of business every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if nothing else. I also tend, if I've done a really long work session, I have an old habit that's been around forever of just kicking out an XML that describes the project where it is and leaving that on the desktop, and then dragging a couple, emailing it to myself. A couple of things, I can drag it into one folder and it automatically propagates it out. That's the just in case everything goes to heck in a handbasket. I have this minute's document as opposed to my iCloud backups, which are also probably going to be the same thing. But over the course of the years, I haven't lost very many pieces of work since I moved to Final Cut, which is really good in terms of the fact that it literally backs up every keystroke that I do. It was one of the first NLEs I ever worked with that literally, as you're typing, if the power fails in the building and I would reopen my Final Cut project, maybe the last keystrokes that I put in were missing, but that was all. Everything else just gets appended to the text file and saved in real time as I go along. So I'm a little less sensitive because I haven't lost anything in a decade because of that, but that's just me. Everybody has their own process, and whatever you do, backups are always primary, secondary, tertiary. Have one offsite if you can, and there's so much cloud storage available now that's easier than it's ever been before. Next question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Does Guy Cochran have any regrets about getting the LG Quad monitor, and how does he use it?
Guy, up to you. Dive in. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, let me cut over to this other shot here. So you can see this is the Quad. It's 4 computers. Basically, I love it. There's no regrets at all. vMix is over here. This is Mimo Live on another computer. Then there's another one that's splash top, so I can get to 10 other computers here. And then there's more stuff over here. But yeah, that's the gist of it is, no regrets. 4 computers with one. And then I'm using Simless Synergy to move my mouse between all the computers. So I can have one big, large 43-inch, I think it is, monitor with 4 1080s in here, and then I got another monitor here and the teleprompter up there. But yeah, it's a wonderful purchase. I highly recommend them.
Alexander Knight, did you have a thought about this?
Yeah, I actually own one of these. I don't regret it. I think it's incredibly useful, but I will say that it is not. One of the annoying things about it is that you can't really tweak the color profiles. It's not super color accurate, and it doesn't have any capability. If you wanted to even calibrate it, a lot of these types of screens usually will have some kind of capability where you can go in and change a lot of the values, but you can't do it with this one. I put it into the cinema color profile because that's the most accurate one, but that's my main issue with it, because I actually like to use it in full. I'll use it in full screen mode actually if I'm editing something, but because it's not 100% color accurate, it's annoying. Recently I bought a couple of these 24-inch Asus ProArt series monitors, which are Kalman calibrated from the factory, and they support 100% of the sRGB spec. I'm really liking these monitors. So I'm thinking at some point I'm probably going to just relegate the LG Quad to just some kind of information screen, and I'm probably going to get a couple of the 27-inch ProArt screens to be my main editing screens, because I want something that has color accuracy. So it just depends on how you're going to use it.
Next question.
This one's from Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. Reset Zoom H5 audio now working. What to do going forward?
That is a Zoom H6, somebody says. So you said now working in the question, but is it not working? So is the Zoom one of your problems, Tony? If so, Zoom's the Zoom audio, and we should probably make this note for those who are not very sophisticated about these two different areas. Zoom is a company that makes hardware things, and Zoom also is the company, obviously, that we're platformed on for this show. 2 different operations and 2 different organizations. But H5 is one of their newest audio products. Everybody seems to be very interested in it now. It seems like a lot of capabilities, but I haven't worked with directly. I have been using a Zoom H4 it has been a decade, but it's probably been 6 or 7 years, and it's been pretty reliable as a remote recording thing. Guy Cochran raised his hand. Let's see what Guy thinks. Guy?
Yeah, I have a couple of Zoom devices, and I was just noticing in chat after watching one of Tony's shows where this unfortunate disconnection occurred, and it's pretty traumatic, I guess would be the word, when you're on a live and you lose your audio. I had it happen earlier in the show today. But yeah, this is the thing about rehearsal. And then I noticed in the chat that Mickey says, stop unnecessarily updating software. And that's a thing, is just you just, once you get a system working, you just leave it, unless there's a time that you have to test before the show and do updates. So I'll do a bunch of updates on a weekend or something like that when I know I have time, and then I iron it out and burn stuff in. I'll let it bake for an hour or 2 and try to do everything that I can think of that would happen. And if there's a script for a show, I try to walk through the whole run of show and just make sure that I'm, switching between this and that and opening up everything and just hearing what I need to hear. And there's nothing wrong with going live to a unlisted YouTube video ahead of time so that you can make sure that you are getting what you're expecting.
Alexander Knight, you had some thoughts to help Tony?
Yeah, regarding software updates, Tony, I would seriously recommend you go into macOS and turn off all the automatic patching functionality and install when you want, install on your own terms. Because like Guy said, and like everyone else has said, you really got to be careful with software updates. And it's not even just major software or major operating system upgrades. For example, like going from Mac OS 14 to 15. I'm talking about even just minor updates. I've had patches from Apple really mess with certain pro level apps. You have to be really careful. Like once you lock it down and it's stable, don't install it just because there's an update available. I've had some really crazy issues with Dante virtual sound card, even just going from one minor patch to another patch. So if it's working, just leave it. I know it's a luxury, but it's kind of nice too when you have multiple computers, because if you had another computer, then you can actually test software updates on that computer and see if they're actually going to be stable before you actually put it out into production. But if you don't have that luxury, I would stick with something that's stable and don't upgrade unless there's a really good reason to, like, for example, like there's an application that you just have to have, or for some reason you can't, you want to get the latest version of Pro Tools and they stop supporting it or something like that. There are certainly reasons to upgrade, but don't do it unless you actually have to.
I have to admit, this is an interesting thing. When I started paying attention to the Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple, and I went online. At first, I got to see it kind of in person and up close, but then I realized how much complexity there was in all the sides of what Apple and any big software company is doing. I sat in some of those seminars, and it's just the depth of the technical complexity of running back ends and all these things it's mind-boggling. And teams of very intelligent engineers are trying to figure out the balance between what features should we change to make them work better for a certain class of user, and what should we keep our hands off because people are depending on them. And there are these constant, we've decided to roll out this change. We know it's going to affect this class of people and it's not going to affect these other three classes of people, but we think there's enough value in this thing, so we're going to change the way the code works to enable that. And I just came out of those sessions and listening to all of those very intelligent programmers and realized that things will get broken when you update things. If you're trying to move forward to present the newest things, there's two approaches. You can say, don't break it, or you can say, improve it. You can't do both at the same time. So people will value different things, and I don't think there is one solution to this. I think there is only your needs. Do you want to stay on the bleeding edge and explore? Or do you want it just to work when you turn the button on and never change? And those two things are pretty difficult to accomplish at the same time. So anyway, those are my 2 cents just from being astonished at listening to some of the engineers talk about what they're trying to do with software. And I think that's true across all software companies. Are you going to be a conservative company, or are you going to be a push-forward company? And they are not the same thing. Anyway, that takes us to past 8 o'clock. I'm sorry I've run a little over for the back-end crew. Thank you all so very much. This is an amazing group of people who really gather together every single day, and we've been doing this for 5 years now to bring this information to you. To the producers, those of you who put the questions into the show, thank you so much for asking intelligent questions and letting us all explore this technology. We really can't do this without you, and we appreciate your being here every day and asking your questions and putting them in the queue. To the panelists, I mean, this has been a great example today of just extraordinary expertise, people who really understand this stuff at a very deep level, coming on and volunteering their time to try to help everybody get a better handle on how this technology works. So thank you very, very much to the panelists. To the back-end crew, an amazing group of people, some of whom are on the panels and some of whom appear in the Q&A and help people there as much as they help people on air here in the front-facing group of folks. It's just amazing how much talent there is behind office hours, and we appreciate each and every one of you. And boy, the back-end crew, some of the smartest and kindest and just most generous people I've ever met in my life, and it's a privilege to hang out with you every day. Our stats today, the Tlaloc Traversal, that's 26,000 miles. That's how far you would have had to travel to get around, to get to the personal expertise that's been giving to you on this show today. That's 42,000 kilometers, 204 million bananas for scale. Thanks so much for paying attention to us today. We will be back here tomorrow doing the same thing. Take care.
Another million bananas in the can.
Yes.
I thought you were just going to keep going, Bill. I thought you were just going to go to like 8:30. I was like,
Yeah,
hey,
what
wait,
the-
are we a second hour? What day is it?
Ringing in my head was the old advice, take your time with the credits. You're right. Great job, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much it makes me feel great when I see these faces here in the morning.
And thank you back end, folks.
Later.
Huge contributions every day.
Just
Some of the
rubbing my
smartest
face.
people.
That's huge. I don't.
All right.
Adios, amigos.
Bye-bye.
Take care, one and all.